Yo, what is up guys? It's Pedro here, and in today's video I will be talking about the report that the Washington Commanders were interested in Eagles quarterbacks coach Brian Johnson for their OC job. I'll also talk about Ron Rivera saying that it isn't guaranteed they will pick up the 5th-year option on Chase Young. So if you guys are new, make sure to subscribe for Washington and NFL content on the road to 11,000 subscribers. Make sure you guys watch the whole video and hit that like button and the notification bell as well. So the other day on John Keim's podcast, he was talking about, he was giving an update on the offensive coordinator situation, and he kind of mentioned a guy that really wasn't mentioned as someone they were interested in until he mentioned it, and that was Eagles quarterbacks coach Brian Johnson, who a lot of different teams are interested in. A lot of people thought he did a really good job this year with Jalen Hurts, and some people think he will be a head coach eventually, and there were some fans from the Commanders that really wanted us to interview him, and it seems like we were interested in him, but a lot of these playoff teams, especially for coordinator roles, they don't want to interview they don't want to interview during the playoffs. So it would be more of a situation where if we were to interview him, it would be after the playoff, or I guess after the Super Bowl's over. And one thing is, if Shane Steichen, the Eagles OC, gets the job in Indianapolis, or he might be interviewing somewhere else, but I think he's one of the favorites for the Indy job. If he gets that job, well, it would be logical for Brian Johnson to get promoted to OC for the Eagles, and then of course he would stick there. Why would he come to Washington for an OC job when he can get the same OC job with the Eagles and get more stability? And I guess you could say that with coming to Washington, he would would be able to call plays, but he might be a little bit too young for that. I'm not sure. So I mean, that could be a situation where it would be a little bit more appealing for him to come. The reason Eric Bieniemy is probably going to leave Kansas City is because he would be getting full play calling responsibilities in Baltimore or in Washington. But Brian Johnson, that's definitely something that's probably appealing to him, but who knows if he is fully ready for that. But if the Eagles OC job is opened up because Shane Steichen's leaving, then that probably means Brian Johnson gets promoted to OC, and then there's just no chance this happens. And Keim kind of talked about it, very likely it's not going to happen just because of the Shane Steichen thing, and it's a little bit too late in the process to get everything started like that. But I just wanted to mention that because Brian Johnson was definitely a very intriguing candidate, and I wanted the Commanders to potentially hire him. They didn't, but at least they're interested in him. Not sure if there's mutual interest, and who knows, maybe they will interview him after the Super Bowl is over, but probably not. It's trending more towards him probably not doing that. And then Keim says also on the OC job, one more job to interview, and that is Bieniemy. Not sure what day that will happen. Then it's decision time. So he's basically saying that's the last candidate. Will probably happen within 2-3 days of the Super Bowl being completed. So the conclusion of the Super Bowl. So anywhere from Monday to Wednesday probably. I mean, it's going to be hard to see them doing it on Monday, especially because they're going to be celebrating, but you could see a Tuesday to Thursday kind of thing for the interview, and that's probably when it'll happen. And then right after that, I hope they make the decision. It's been a very, very long time, and I'm glad that it's close to being over, so we can just talk about the OC thing for a week or so. After once we know our guy, we can watch some videos and stuff and do some research on him and whoever that is, if it's Bieniemy, Shermer, Lynn, or anyone. And after that, we can start focusing on free agency, some free agency fits with the new offensive coordinator and the new owner, which I'm hoping will that'll get out of the way soon. And I tweeted out we might be going from Scott Turner and Dan Snyder to Eric Bieniemy and Jeff Bezos or whoever. I know people. The thing that gets me upset is there was a few people in the comments oh, Jeff Bezos is not much better than Dan Snyder. Please stop with that BS. Dan Snyder was one of the worst owners in NFL history over the last 23 years, not only because of how bad he managed the team, but also because of the workplace stuff. Bezos, at the very least, will let the football people do what they need to do. Someone else said, well, he doesn't know football. Well, who cares if the owner knows football? I mean, Dan Snyder was a huge Redskins fan, and look how that turned out. So for me, I really don't care about the back. I honestly would probably rather prefer a guy that was not invested, was not a Commanders fan or Redskins fan growing up, and just lets the football people do what they need to do. And that's what I would rather have. And, Jeff Bezos has run a lot of successful businesses. He's done a good job there. And yes, there's been some controversies, but for the most part, he's done a good job. And I would not mind him at all as a Commanders owner, and much, much rather have him than Dan Snyder. If you would rather have Dan Snyder, hey, I don't know. I do not agree with that at all. So NFL teams were informed of fifth-year options amounts for players selected in the first round of the 2020 draft. You see the number there for Chase Young, $17.5 million. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money for a guy that has had 1.5 sacks in the last 2 years. And of course, that has been because of injuries. I mean, he only played 3 games this year, missed over half a season last year, or missed about a half a season. But still, nonetheless, even when he's played, especially in the second season, underwhelming. First season was about what we expected, but last year, or 2021, very, very disappointing. So for me, I don't know. I would probably pay it, but it's definitely a risk. It's definitely a risk for sure. Another option that the Washington Commanders have is that they could not pick up the fifth-year option, and let's say Chase Young balls out and they can't really agree to terms on an extension, they could franchise tag him, but that would keep him, under team control for a total of 5 years. But let's say they've picked up the fifth-year option this year and had him for 5 years, they could also franchise tag him the next year anyways. So that is just something to consider. I keep seeing people say, they did it with Deron Payne, or like they didn't pick up the deal with Deron Payne and he ended up balling out. Well, they did pick up the deal. I'm pretty sure they picked up the fifth-year deal. They just didn't pay him before he got into his contract year, and they still have yet to pay him. Maybe they will this offseason, but that's just, who knows? Maybe if they don't pick it up for Chase Young, it will be a motivating factor for him. And, hey, if that works, that works. Some players are motivated by different things, and who knows? Maybe Chase Young is very, very motivated by money, but whatever it is, it's a difficult decision because $17.4 million is a huge, huge cap hit, and I'm pretty sure that's guaranteed. So $17.4 million for a guy that in his second, his last healthy season, he had 7.5 sacks, but the next year he had 1.5 sacks in like 10 games, and then this past year, I'm not really counting that. His sack numbers because he didn't have any, but he also was coming back from injury. So this year is really, really big. This year is huge for him. And if he does get an extension, I don't know how much over 20 it's going to be. If he is what we thought he was, it's going to be a lot over 20 million. But if it's what he's been playing in his second season, then it's not going to be that much. So it's definitely something that they're going to have to think about a lot. And Ron Rivera had a quote. I'll go ahead and read it right here. He said, no, because that's what we do with Deron. It costs us, but it costs us in a good way because the young man played. He did things the right way. He didn't sit out. He didn't withhold. He could have done that, sit in during training camp, but he didn't. And because he didn't, now we're in the position where we have to find a way to say thank you. Okay, you've earned it. So it seems like he wants to pay Deron Payne, but he kind of implied that they didn't pick up his fifth-year option, but I'm pretty sure they did, and he just didn't get paid before that fifth-year option or before they got into the contract year. But Rivera said they haven't yet decided whether they'll exercise Chase Young's fifth-year option. They need to discuss his health and review his growth and development, but he wouldn't be worried about the messaging if they decline to pick it up. So that is going to be a debate for another day. I would really have to think about it. I would really have to think about if I would want to pick it up. It's tough to not do it. He's your number 2 overall pick. So, yeah, he's your number 2 overall pick. To not get your fifth-year contract picked up, that's not good at all. But at the same time, it could be used as a motivating factor, and they can franchise tag him the year after and still have him under control. Or if he balls out, give him a big deal. So that is just something to consider. But if they don't pick the deal up, he's a free agent after this year. So that is just something to consider. So I'd probably lean more towards picking that option up. But either way you put it, like, I wouldn't disagree with you either way. If you want to say, if you strongly agree that we should not pick it up or pick it up, like, I see both sides. It's really like probably 60-40 for me in terms of what I think they should do. And just because you invested a second overall pick in him, I'm probably going to say you keep that fifth-year option, just keep control, because if he does hit, it's going to be $25